Yeah, it's a trip. It's a year that we've been in this uh, kind of new world that's wanting to emerge. Um, this in between world. This yeah, and so one thing um, one thing that's not new is the need to be in community. So I'm just really thankful to to be with each of you here. So I just want to invite the bell one time for those that were unnamed. So for those that were named in the chat and unnamed in the chat, I'll invite the bell mindfulness. So most of you know we usually start with a formal practice. So I'm going to invite us into some movement and then into a so this is 1 year of the coronavirus pandemic. It's also in the northern hemisphere. We're going into spring. So there's a change of season as well, and there's a lot of energy that comes with this time of year. So I'm going to invite us to, um, of course, always get in touch with our bodies in whatever way that feels good. And I'm going to invite us into some movement, and then we'll move into a lying down meditation. And so, if you would like to get uh, things, if you choose to get like pillows and blankets, just to feel really comfortable, and and as you're doing this, I'm going to invite you to bring some awareness to your shoulders. And if it feels good, to just roll them out. You can make circles, or you can give yourself a massage with your hands on your shoulders if that feels appropriate. And if you're moving your shoulders in one direction, as you're ready, you'll move them in the other direction. And then, if you like, circling your wrists. So, making circles with your wrists. And then in the other direction. And if it feels good for your head and neck, I'll invite you to just make some very gentle circles with your head and neck. Sometimes it feels good to move your shoulders, and definitely relax your jaw as you do this. And most importantly, breathe. Breathe where it feels good to breathe as you make circles in one direction. And you can pause in an area and breathe there. And then as you're ready, if you want to move in the other direction, okay, then you'll come back to center, and then shrug and roll your shoulders again if you want. And then a couple more movements. So this is for the spine. For those of you who are familiar with the yoga pose, cat cow, I'm going to invite us to move our spine. So if you'd like, bring your chin toward your chest, and the middle part of your back goes back like a cat stretching. And if you want to bring your belly in, if that feels good to you, and then relax your belly, and then lift the head up and lift your chin up, and opening the front of your body. So, as you wish, let's move back and forth at your own pace. Exhale as you curl down, and inhale as you curl up. If another mindful movement wants to arise, definitely do that. Just invite us, if you're practicing this movement, to do it a couple more times, inhaling up and exhaling down. And then, as you're ready, we'll come back to center. And if you want, stretch your arms up above your head and just to open up the sides of your torso. You might reach up and down. And then you might sense that you can take more breath into your torso. So do that, a couple breaths, like you're filling up your whole torso with breath. And so any other movement that feels good here, definitely bring some awareness to your feet. If you want to circle your feet and your ankles, I'm going to invite you, if your body's calling for a lying down posture, to transition there, and it'll be easier to um, roll your feet and ankles out a bit. And so if you're lying on the ground, I there's a bunch of stuff you can do. You can rest your, if it's good for your body, you can rest your feet on the sofa, or you could have cushions underneath your knees, which can feel really good, or keep your knees bent so to take pressure off the lower back. And I'm gonna guide us through a body scan for yoga practitioners. You may have heard and practice yoga nidra, which translates for yogic sleep. So if you happen to fall asleep, I'll encourage you to enjoy your nap. At the end, I'll ring the mindfulness bell 3 times. And so, but just to get as comfortable as possible, and just to rest. It's been a long year. It's been a long month, a long day, a long lifetime, whatever unit of measurement you want to use. And so hopefully it's a long, eternal now that we're spending together and creating this field of practice together. There are 77 of us here in the Zoom room, and since we're all connected, we're creating a field of letting our body rest and letting our body take in this moment. And so finding whatever posture, the four formal postures are moving, standing, sitting, and lying down. And lying down, I've heard, is the toughest because it's so easy to fall asleep. And like I mentioned, if you fall asleep, enjoy your nap. and um, and so find what feels loving really to your body right now. There's no perfect way to practice. If there was, it would not be called a practice. And it's revolutionary to give ourselves permission to relax. And it could be called deeply spiritual to allow the earth to support us. The earth can completely support us and does so, I believe, without judgment, with a tremendous force that can hold the suffering that our body carries. So notice what parts of your body are touching the ground and allow those parts to feel a sense of like melting, just letting go and experiencing the unconditional support of the earth beneath us. And as we do this, you might sense that there is a separation. Our bones are made of the minerals of the rocks that are in the earth, on the earth. The blood flowing in our veins are like the water, the rivers and streams. The fire deep in the earth's core. We have the same fire happening in between our cells. And lastly, the air element, the breath, the same breath that caresses tree leaves and blooming flowers. It's caressing our nose and our mouth and nourishing our body, oxygenating as we breathe in and breathing out. We're nourishing the earth, all the living beings in this great cycle. So allowing yourself to be just as you are. Again, if it's available, feeling the unconditional support of the earth. And sensing the field that we're creating together. This courageous field of wanting to see and understand this body, because this body is the only way we can experience this life, this one precious life we have. So allowing your body to be just as it is. If it needs to move at any point, I invite you to do so. Just do it mindfully. We're wanting to bring a settledness to our body, knowing that there's always activity of thoughts and feelings and physical sensations and in our body, and a lot of activity outside our bodies, and how dignifying and ennobling it can be to slow down enough to take refuge in our body and refuge in this collective field that we're creating together. Just one last thing before, just to scan our body. Just notice your feet and your ankles. If you'd like to visualize like just a warming sun warming your bones in your feet and your ankles and your Achilles heel and your calves, shins, your knees, backs of knees, thighs, backs of thighs, your hips, your glutes. And allow the earth to support us. And if you like moving your attention to your lower back, you might sense that you could send your breath. You might even feel the lower back move. I encourage you to do that. Just take your time and allow the breath to go into the lower back, a place many of us are sore. And breathing to your mid back and your upper back. In the front of your torso, your chest, your belly. And here that sun image is with you. You might imagine that it's warming and healing all these vital organs and the sore muscles in our back. And your shoulders, your arms, forearms, wrists, and hands. Your shoulders and your collarbones and your neck, your throat, your entire head, the skull, and your ears, even the brim of your ears, and inside to your eardrums, and even to our brain. And just maybe your next couple of breaths, you imagine breathing in to all your facial muscles, your jaw, your brain, your ears. A couple gentle breaths. We'll be in silence for a few minutes and find whatever practice works for you. Maybe you continue focusing on your breath or gentle movement or visualizing the sun or another practice. And just allowing yourself to be here just as you are, taking in this one precious moment, taking in the refuge of Sangha. So sensing with kindness your body. And these last couple of minutes, I'm going to invite you into a kindness, friendliness, metta practice. Just to wish kindness to this complex body. You can send metta to a part of your body, your whole body, or to somebody else if that's what needs to happen. Is wishing in safety and in gladness. May our bodies support the practice of loving awareness. May this body support the practice of loving awareness. May we be happy, know the true causes of happiness, the happiness of being in the here and in the now. May we be happy. So may I, this body, may we be safe and protected, free from inner and outer harm. May I be safe and protected, free from inner and outer harm. And be safe. And may this body, may I be full of peace and ease. In this stillness, may I be peaceful, full of ease. We'll spend the last 2 minutes as you wish with these phrases, remembering the support of the earth, the support of the Sangha. I'm going to invite the singing bowl, and if you choose to move, I'll guide us through moving very slowly. If you'd like to Start to deepen your breath. Maybe start to wiggle toes and fingers. It feels good to rock your head from side to side, or any other movement or stretching, or just staying still in the posture that you're in. No need to get out of it, nowhere to go, just being here. And so taking your time and whatever you need to do in this next moment to take care of yourself. Just taking another moment to enjoy the peace, if it was even for a minute, a millisecond. Just enjoy the peace that you've created and that we co-created together. And, and I bow to you for your practice. Thank you for your practice. All right, welcome back, everyone. And just take a moment here to, we can sense in moments that this connection and the field touch into our being here. I'm seeing a lot of friends of many years, and and new friends, and so I'm just really thankful that we have the privilege to be here together and to talk about spiritual solutions for pandemic problems. Um, yeah, we know especially here in the U.S., the pandemic, um, the multiple pandemics, right, of of, of poverty and housing insecurity and um, racial capitalism and so I'm just jumping in, and so I'm going to focus on these, pandemics of climate chaos, right? And the outbreaks of fascism here and around the globe. And a couple days ago, there was an election in El Salvador, and it looks like my one of my homelands, El Salvador, is turning toward that. Yeah, and of course the coronavirus pandemic, right? All these pandemics are amplifying and are being amplified, as I'm seeing it, by like a sense of mistrust, this pandemic of mistrust. And being here with you all is getting me in touch with um, trusting in this practice and trusting in speaking truth and having that truth be reflected. And and as so many of our communities are being squeezed tighter and tighter, because of the pandemic of economic decline and change, and the pandemic of patriarchy, of that falling apart. Um, the tendency is amongst our communities, like the fabric is already kind of frayed, and that it's easy to cause more separation. And and we know that's how the systems are designed, these uh, dominator systems, is to divide and conquer us. And that's manifest as of late, just hearing about the increase in the violence against Asian American folks, and then I read an article by John A. Powell, who's director of the center out of UC Berkeley called Othering and Belonging Institute. And yesterday he wrote this article saying it's entitled "Asians Must Be a Part of Our Story Too," and how we are forced to be in competition with one another and blame each other for our suffering. And how can we come together to identify and challenge a system that is hurting us all? He continues, our fates are intertwined. Without denying our agency and the tensions that are in our community, we must also acknowledge that many of the problems we face are due to a system grounded in white supremacy that harms all of us, including Blacks, Asians, whites, and others. He writes, we need a new story where we could all contribute and co-create, one that acknowledges our respective suffering and that insists that we all belong, not because we agree, but because we care and we are human. John A. Powell, I had the fortune of meeting him. He came to EBMC exactly 8 years ago, this 2014 of March. And he talked about expanding the circle of concern, is what he calls it. And tonight I want to talk about the ways, and obviously we can't talk about all of them, but what like blocks us from increasing that circle of care and concern, mainly just for ourselves, and I'll do ourselves in quotes because we are all connected, right? So there isn't a separate essential self. And what keeps me coming back to this philosophy of Buddhism is that it really breaks down why we suffer. And I want to talk about the translation I like, ennobling truths. Ennobling because it doesn't, in some ways, make things easier. Uh, Yet it helps us see things clearer. And when we see things clearer, we're not adding to the suffering that's already inherent in living a life. And so the first one, many of you have heard the term dukkha, Dukkah, and it has a few translations, and the way I understand it is, the translations are like stress or unsatisfactoriness or suffering. One we use a lot these days is the word trauma. And as I understand it, it's really important not to try to get the definition right, because embedded in that is more dukkha, like more of an illusion that we can work our way to a place where we won't experience it anymore. And this first ennobling truth, it's not so much like saying, oh, yeah, it exists, but actually getting to the roots of why it exists in our present moment experience and really seeing how it's exacerbated like by our unwise, unskillful actions. And these ennobling truths, they work together. You can't really separate them. So the second one is that the cause of dukkha is this pushing and pulling, this constant illusion that we, if we just have enough, and a place I get stuck around enoughness is this the obvious enoughness of proximity to whiteness and wanting to associate with dominator culture so that I'm not dominated. And that's a illusion because we know if one of us is not free, like none of us is free, right? But this sense of how I internalize that I'm not enough, I'm not queer enough, I'm not Latinx enough, I'm not down enough, I'm not this enough, I'm not that enough, right? And how I've received that criticism from even within my own communities. And this sort of attachment to wanting to be seen as enough from other people. And really, what it comes down to is to be humanized. Um, when in actuality, the systems are really designed to dehumanize, but not our essence, right? All the attachment, the second ennobling truth is this, as I see it, this searching outside of ourselves for that validation and and humanization. And not to say that, again, that we are living in times where the resources are and have been extracted from us, from the earth. But the second ennobling truth, I think the crux of it is that we blame ourselves for wanting to feel okay and blame other people for when we don't feel okay. That, you know, is that, James Baldwin said it. He says, around pain that, sometimes, not sometimes, let me just get, one of the reasons we cling to our hate so stubbornly is because we sense once hate is gone, we'll be forced to deal with pain. And so it's very compelling to be, to get stuck in seeing the second ennobling truth as all there is, that this life is all this constant struggle, and then you die, right? Um, and this being with things in the most compassionate, the most caring way is it's really hard, and that's where the third ennobling truth comes in, as I understand it. It's this one of the translations is cessation of suffering is possible, and that's so important, I feel, to really trust in the possibility that there are moments, there are gaps in between that pushing and pulling of that hypervigilance of having to survive and protect all the time, that this third ennobling truth promises that there's cessation of suffering is possible. And how to trust in that, and the Buddha said, see for yourself, um, really be aware of what you're practicing, and are we practicing fear, or are we practicing capital L love? This, the sense of, as we were practicing that support of the earth, it's and so how do we build faith and trust in the practice? And that leads us to this eh, noble eightfold path, the fourth ennobling truth. And many of you know all the lists, and there's 8 of them, and it's not quite the way I see it, a checking off, like, okay, I did this, and then I'm all good. I did that. But again, coming back to this concept of like that all of these are working together. And I'll just break down as I see them, this eightfold path. They're split into 3 categories, and it's sila, prajna, and samadhi. So sila is the Buddhist word for ethics, and prajna is wisdom, and samadhi is like wise mindfulness and concentration. And the sila part is something, the 3 of them that are associated with that are wise, or I like the translation mature speech and mature action and mature livelihood. And I grew up as a 7-day Adventist. So the wise livelihood, I use the word God for that one. And I say that God's my employer. And, many of us are dealing with unemployment and maybe jobs we don't like. And that I remind myself that my my commitment, my livelihood is bigger than any job, any identity, and um, and we know wise speech and and wise action are so important. Then those are related to the 5 precepts, for us to live in a world that we don't create more harm than there is, and we watch the way we speak to ourselves, most importantly, because when we don't see how mean we are to ourselves, it's the pain becomes too much, as that James Baldwin quote says, and we like throw it to other people and quote unquote other, right? And the sense of taking action to take care of ourselves and honor our energy. And samadhi, the kind of trying to practice with wise effort, the sort of the middle way, and not beating ourselves up. And we have such, we are, I think the way I came into Buddhism, and you just Google it and you start to see what images are most common, and this like obsession with like sitting meditation, and that's like the only way to meditate. And so I hope that people don't believe that hype, and that there's so many ways to meditate. Um, and as in that meditation, one of the images that I offered was around the wind or the air blowing on the leaves, and that sense of getting in touch with the natural world. Not that it's separate from us, but how important it is to get in touch with nature time, because that's like some good shit, some like very effective ways to really be in uh, the moment. Um, and because there's so many things that are taking us from the moment. And I didn't mention the fifth precept is usually the refraining from intoxicants, and how intoxicating our our apps can be. For me, it's like seeing all these pretty highly pixelated images. And as I'm swiping and swiping or scrolling, I'm like, just one more image and then I'll be happy, right? Then I'll be calm. Then the anxiety will go away, or then I won't have to think about the grief or whatever is unpleasant. And so being aware of, where when we are on our devices and and bringing that wise effort of like, what's the middle way with this? Like, where can I find space to practice something else? Because it's such a habit. Like, I've been noticing my kind of thumbs are a little bit like, I'm just like, what's, and so I'm just trying to be kind, but also put in the intention, really. That's the last two of these Eightfold Path of wise view and wise intention, of like seeing that things clearly and what's my intention for the day. Am I just gonna sit on the toilet and allow this natural function to happen without having a device in my hand, and mindful toilet, hashtag mindful toileting. um, And I want to say, since I'm getting all personal, that I went 1 year, like I think it was a New Year's resolution in 2019, and I went a whole year without that. So, and so there's plenty of ways, the moral of the story, to practice meditation. Let's see. So I'm not sure I'm going to end it on that. Did I talk enough about spiritual solutions? So so we know them. They're in our blood. They're in the very fiber of our beings. This body is how we connect to it. No one could take that wisdom from us. It comes from uh, amazing beings that have survived um, over a long time, and and from taking in the nature around us and seeing the resilience. and and resilience is cultivated by, as you may have noticed that I just did, is taking a breath, and that being aware of the moment is the thing we can do the most to create resilience. Because I'm still in the ignorance, and we're all ignorant, and good stuff comes out of ignorance too. Everything comes out of ignorance. I think it's kind of a Buddhist philosophical point, that it's not like moralizing that you're on your phone too much, or um, not just stopping the next episode part of whatever streaming service we're using, and just sitting there and letting it take our attention. So it's not really a moralistic thing, but just it's it's noticing, and it's like, what do I want to practice right now? And when we're able to do that, and I call that grace, it's like those moments of grace that we can invest in the like piggy bank of our practice, because inevitably the shit's going to hit the fan, and so we can break that piggy bank of, of wisdom, relaxation, whatever, and then we might have enough energy to unplug the fan so it's not going everywhere. Um, okay, I keep on coming back to the bodily, the unpleasant. If that's actually the Buddha's recommendation for dealing with the attachment, the sense desire that It's actually to reflect on like our the pus and the tears and the sweat and the excrement. Like it's actually to look at our humanness and to not take ourselves so seriously, um, and to see how we are yeah just amazing and all that we do, and that we will change, and that we will um, have many opportunities to practice, and but those will inevitably continue to change moment to moment. So I'm gonna stop there, and I'm just gonna open it up to some discussion in these last few minutes. The teaching I was referring to is around sense desire. So when um, I've been on longer retreats, there's a tendency to want to feel good. And there's six senses, sometimes called the six sense spheres. So, sight and hearing and touch and so on. And the sixth sense is the mind. And the mind is highly conditioned. And it's not just our brain, it's our whole experience. And so that when we're focusing on the unpleasantness of the body, um, that when inevitably we are wanting to avoid displeasure, discomfort, and we go into like fantasies about all sorts of stuff, and I and it's so common to do that, and then we pass a whole life like not living in the pleasure of the now, and so it's it's really a practice of focusing on the um, actually I have a book here. So one of the translations is general acquaintance with and formal meditation on the body's unattractiveness. And this has huge implications because when we are constantly sold that we are not enough, that we're not lovable, because our skin color, because our body size, because our sex, our gender expression, that really turns our attention to the real, and not the fake that's being sold to us. And so that's just one angle on that. Um, so I see you nodding. So hopefully that was helpful. And yeah, that can take down the multi-million dollar wellness industrial complex. You know, that yoga nidra practice. It's been around like arguably longer than Buddhism, 5,000 years. And that can be really healing to really focus. Because for me, looking at all the images, I start to um, be deluded that that's what health looks like. If I was only that size or that skin color or that airbrushed, I mean, it's all airbrushed, right? That just the right lighting. Um, and this practice is about the real light, and the shadows that the light makes, and so yeah, okay.